A 14-year hiatus, but a lifetime of anxiety when seeing a log truck on the highway. That's right, Final Destination is back with Bloodlines. Let's talk about it. My name is Kyle. Thank you for jumping into Movie Tactics with me today, where we not only discuss the characters, the story, the plot of a movie, but also what makes a movie special, the props, the firearms, the vehicles, and in this case, the creative ways to die in Final Destination Bloodlines. Now, this is a spoiler-free review, and I just saw this movie in theaters with a bunch of my friends, and that's really the way to see it. These movies, if you know, you know. I'm a 90s kid. I grew up with these movies. This actually marks the 25th anniversary of the first Final Destination. If you've never seen a Final Destination before, really the plot of every single movie is very much the same. The framework is there, and this one is no different. Someone has a vision where they see how everyone is going to die in a certain event at the beginning of the movie. They get a handful of people out of that situation, and then death comes after each one by one. Death doesn't like you messing with that plot of his, and he wants to make sure that you pay if you do meddle with that. Now, this movie, Bloodlines, is 14 years after, like I mentioned, the fifth installment. I just watched all 5, with the exception of rewatching 4, because that one's terrible. And the movies have always fascinated me. They have very unique settings to them, and they do a pretty good job with what they're designed to do from a very suspenseful and thrilling type of movie. Now, with that being said, Bloodlines just came out, and the cast, most of them are really unknown actors, and a lot of that is due to the design of the movie itself. A lot of them are unknown actors. There's been a couple here and there that are relatively known throughout the series, but for the most part, it's just actors that kind of come out of nowhere, and this might be their first acting job, but with that, they usually die off. So it's kind of a good setting to set up for some new, fresh faces, and you don't really want Brad Pitt or Leo out there anyways behind a log truck getting splattered. So it's kind of fun to have some fresh faces and see how it goes. And this movie does a really good job. It sets the tone. The movie starts off with a very gripping sequence at essentially a Space Needle. You can't really call it that, but it's a tower with a restaurant on top, just opened in 1968. And you're introduced to the character Stephanie, who is the main character in this movie, going back to her family lineage, back to that tower, and the events that unfold. As you've seen in the trailer, problems ensue, but then there's a vision again that pulls everyone out of that tower, saving countless lives. But again, Death doesn't like meddling with that, right? He doesn't like you messing with his plan, so that movie already has a bit of a twist to it, because typically they talk about in all the Final Destinations meddling with the plan, and Death kind of seeing how they're meddling with it, and they go and Death goes and takes them out or whatever it is. But with this movie, there's hundreds of lives, so there's all this whole family tree and people who were not supposed to exist, all going down generations and decades, and it slowly catches up to Stephanie and her family, and they find out what Death has planned in store for them. Tony Todd is back playing William Bloodworth. R.I.P. November 2024. He did pass away, sadly, to stomach cancer, but he was the one pillar of every single movie. So this was really his last role, and they did a great job with this role for him. He was kind of linked to all of them. He did a great job kind of just as a generic connection for every movie, and then you finally learn in this movie his full connection to all of the films and really to their family and why he knows death more than anyone else. Some of the trailers gave away some of the deaths, and you kind of see that, which is, kind of a shame, because the deaths are a big part of these movies. In fact, I thought this movie was more focused on the story and the characters than any of the other ones. A lot of times you're going death, 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 just going down the line. And this one, it kind of seemed like they were spread out a little bit different pace than other Final Destinations, but they went full in on this. You can kind of see the budget was there. They really did a good job pulling putting this together after that long hiatus from the last one. And I think the acting was on point. The CGI didn't take you out of any of the scenes, and the suspense on what's going to happen. Why is this happening? Is this going to be the reason why someone dies? Is this what death has in planned? You kind of see that in every scene throughout this entire movie, and it just seems like it's more focused on that story, so it's a little bit less about the deaths, but then it kind of picks up in the middle of the movie and kind of sprinting towards the end once you realize what is going on. Now, one thing I noticed about this movie compared to the other 5 was from a suspense aspect. They had several characters who were in this movie who weren't on death's plan. Obviously, they're just like different family members who married into the family who not really blood related, right? Bloodlines, right? Not related to this family who death has in the crosshairs. So these family members were just out there, and they were always told, don't meddle with death, right? So there's all these scenes where like, oh, they're gonna die. Why would they die? Death isn't after them. And it's just a fun kind of suspenseful part that you didn't really see a whole lot of in the other movies. And I liked how they put that as a spin in this movie and used that generational decades of family lineage and family trees to kind of add to the plot. There weren't any weapons or anything like that beyond just standard stuff you would see in a Final Destination type movie, where you have these scenes throughout the movie that have various settings that might have objects that can easily kill someone, you know, with death kind of setting off this chain of events to make it happen. But there weren't firearms or knives or anything like that. And you've seen now we're scared of cookouts and barbecues and rakes and shards of glass in ice. If you break a glass, the proper method is to dump out all of the ice around a broken glass, so you need to just clear that out. I mean, if you worked in the restaurant, you knew that. But obviously, they didn't care about that in the backyard. So that being said, I think that they did a great job with the practical effects as well as some of the CGI, and kind of making a hybrid approach to this, where they kind of did what they could with some of the practical effects and then also added some CGI where they needed to. And it didn't really take away from the story too much. I really enjoyed that part. The critics gave this movie a 94%. I'm going to give it a 78%. That's right. I think it's worthy of a 78%. It's a Final Destination movie. And that being said, it is definitely one of the better ones that I've seen, especially because the last 2 months I've watched all of them and just kind of caught myself up. But I think 78% is right where this needs to be. It isn't some cinematic type of movie. It's really about the suspense and the excitement, understanding what death has in planned for all the characters. And that suspense is really what brings this horror series to life. And that's why we keep watching Final Destinations. And who knows if there'll be another number 7. I hope so, because if they have more creative ways, I'll be there. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this movie tactics review. We're new here, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. What did you think of Final Destination Bloodlines? Hit them down in the comments. Let me know what you think about the movie. What was your favorite of the 6 of them out there now? Is there anything that you would like to see different than Bloodlines? Let's talk about it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next movie review.